Hey guys, so I'm still a little bit sick, I'll warn you guys now, but I am not as bad as I was before. I am not burning up anymore, my throat isn't trying to claw itself out, and I can mostly breathe, so that's a good start. So today is going to be one of those videos where we get back into the swing of things and it's going to sound like I'm giving advice, but I'm not really giving advice because I'm not published, so I'm not really qualified in my head to give advice, but it sounds like I'm giving advice and I'm not even a minute in and I'm already rambling. I'm so sorry. But yeah, it's going to be one of those videos today where we are going to be talking about a topic and it's going to sound like I'm giving you guys advice when it's just a look into my own process. Long story short, scenes and chapters. Chapters. Now, I know that this seems like a pretty obvious thing to talk about because it's scenes and chapters. They're like one of the main structures of writing books in general, so why are we talking about the difference between them? The thing is, you'd be surprised how many people actually struggle with this structure, and myself being one of them. I didn't know if there were any set rules of how many scenes needed to make up a chapter. Could a chapter just be a scene on its own? And the answer really is it's up to you, and that really confused me. I mean, when it comes to stuff like this, I like to be told what the structure is so I know how to work with it. And when I'm told, oh, it's up to you, part of me is like, oh great, creative freedom, let's run with this. And the other part of me is like, yeah, you say do what you want, but then everyone has expectations and I'd like to know what those are, please, just so I know what to do. It's just that mindset that has been drummed into me that everything does have a structure and you do need to stick to it, which is great in some ways, but other ways it's a nightmare. So yeah, if any of you are having this problem, join the club. But these are a few things that I found that actually kind of work and how my mind has kind of interpreted them into something that I can actually use in my writing. Now, it is true, it is up to you. Like, for example, James Patterson, any of his books can range between having chapters that are spanning about 6 different character groups, all in different scenes, and then other times he'll have one chapter which will be about 2 paragraphs long, which is like a fraction of a scene, but it still works, and then suddenly you're back to maybe 4 scenes in a chapter and then maybe the 1 page, and he does what he does and it works. It doesn't make it too cluttered, you get the point and then you quickly move on, and that's his style of writing and that's brilliant. But then you'll have other books like Name of the Wind, for example. Now, that was an amazing book, but those chapters lasted an eternity, covering like months of a character's life. Which, obviously, in a few months of life, you're going to get many, many scenes, and it just kept going. It does vary, so you can have issues where a scene and chapter in one can last 1 page. You can have multiple scenes that last pages and pages and pages to make up just 1 chapter. And then you've got other end of the scale where, yeah, 1 scene and 1 chapter are the same thing, but they still last pages and pages and pages. There's no structure. I'm very sorry. There is no structure, and it hurts to accept that, but the sooner you accept it, it does make the writing process a lot easier, and you do feel a lot less pressure on yourself to overwrite or underwrite just to try and fit a certain scale. Something I do find that helps with me is to remember these 2 simple things. Every chapter has to have an event, whereas every scene has to have a point. And thinking about it out loud, that does sound like it's the same thing. Like, isn't an event and a point the same thing? Don't you need both to make a story? Yes, you do, but they're not necessarily the same thing. In my head, they're not necessarily the same thing. It's easier up here than it is out here. What is with my hair today? Christ alive! So the way my brain interprets it is that an event is something big and a major point in your story. And I know I'm using the word point in both scenes here, but let's just focus on an event. So, for example, with an event, every chapter needs an event. Every chapter needs to have something big that does push the story along, or adds a plot twist, or adds a new element. It's something big that matters to your story and pushes it along. It is when you're doing the big outline and you're thinking, right, this needs to happen, this needs to happen, this needs to happen, so therefore this can be the end game. All of those little things are big events, and each chapter needs an event like that to really keep your attention, to make sure everything is mattering and pushing the story forward and there's no lag. It is just event, 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 event. But when you break that down into scenes, you'll find that this big event might not fit into every single little scene. It might be the big event at the end of the chapter in the last scene that really pushes things around. Or it could be an event at the beginning and then the following scenes are the aftermath. So if you do want one big event to happen in one chapter and that be the main focus, then by all means have that as your one scene, because then it's a point and an event in one. But with a point, each scene needs a point. So for example, say, you know, the story's quieting down, it's having like a nice lull, the calm before the storm, and two characters are just talking. They might not have had the chance to talk for a while, or they're addressing a topic that they haven't had the chance to previously, and it's not a big event, it's not a big turning point in the story, it is just two characters talking with each other. And you're thinking, that sounds like filler? But not if it has a point. If your point is to have these characters bond over something, or have a realization, or maybe just enjoy their time together knowing that this big storm is coming their way, then that's a point. Because if your characters don't have chemistry and a sense of realism about them, then you're really going to struggle to have anyone connect with them. So little moments like that do have a point, because it shows bonding, it shows character development, it shows that time and effort was taken to make sure that they are having this moment. So it's really hard to kind of explain. Can you have an event and a point that are exactly the same thing? Yes, of course you can. Like I said earlier, if you want to have just your one chapter focusing on one scene where this big event is happening, and then you move on to the next chapter, by all means go for it. If you want to have one chapter that has lots of little scenes but each one has a point, so maybe two characters having a conversation, maybe they're going somewhere new, maybe they're discovering something for the first time, and then right at the end, boom, there's your event that shows all this calm was just a big red herring that, nope, it's not over yet, off you go back on your adventure. Then by all means do it. There is just such a fun mishmash of options that you have, and it doesn't matter which way you do it as long as it feels right to you and it reads well and it matters to the story, because that's the point, that it has to matter to your story. I mean, if you just had two characters having a conversation about the weather just because you had nothing else to write about, that's not a point. It does not have a point whatsoever, unless there is a very literal storm on the horizon that they need to prepare for. Then by all means that conversation about the weather has a point, because it is something that they're going to need to refer back to later on. But if they're just like,
oh, good day, old man, how is this fine British weather we've been having? Oh, it's abysmal, isn't it? How's work? Oh, it's going fine as usual, business markets, oh, have a nice day, have a nice day.
what was the point? Whereas if you have a conversation between guys, oh,
how's that weather looking? Oh, it's not looking great, to be honest. You see those clouds? It looks like a storm. What do you mean there's a storm? We haven't recovered from the last one. We don't have time. Well, we need to make time. How are our men? Well, they're badly wounded, but what can we do? I don't know. I don't know if we're going to make it through it.
It's a terrible example, but do you see what I mean with the weather? It can either be pointless and boring, or it can have a point as long as it's referred to later on. At the end of the day, when it comes to scenes and chapters, they're not so different, but there is a difference. You can jumble them around whichever way you want to. Hell, some books don't even have chapters. It is just a series of scenes or one giant scene that is just a stream of consciousness. And then you do have to be more delicate in how you handle your points and events. But at the end of the day, it is all up to you. There is no right or... well, I say that there is a wrong way of doing it, but not many wrong ways. I guess it is all down to you. It's just, I really, me personally, I enjoy writing chapters that do have more than one scene to it, just because I feel like it gives everyone a chance to have more screen time, it has more of a chance for character development, and it gives you a chance to explore the world that you're building a little bit more. But I'm not information dumping, or at least I hope I'm not information dumping. Like I said, I haven't quite got to the editing stages yet, but in my head I like to think I'm not information dumping. I just like to think of it as, yes, every chapter is going to have an event, so a big turning point in the story that is going to push the story and the characters on as a whole. But then I do like to have my scenes in those chapters where, yes, one scene will be the event. Sorry. However, other scenes will be a little bit calmer, maybe add a little bit more mystery, have some more characters talking, they're going to a new place. It's calmer, it's not as plot heavy, but it still has a point to the characters and to the story in some way, if that makes any sense. So I've rambled on a lot, and I'm pretty much going over the same things at this point, so I think I'll leave it there. But it is up to you. I'm not going to tell you how to do things, that is just how I like to remember it. You need this, and you need this. Chapters for events, every scene needs a point if you're not going to have the whole event covering one chapter. It makes sense up here, I hope it's making sense coming out here. If any of you guys have any advice for me, by all means, I would love to hear it. I love hearing about how people interpret it in different ways, how they produce it in different ways. It's just, I just enjoy bouncing creative ideas off each other. So yeah, I hope this helped in some way. Like I said, it's not advice, it's just how I do things. But yeah, scenes and chapters. Simple on the surface, but tricky little buggers. Okay, I'll leave it here before this goes into even more ramble territory. Well, happy writing guys, I hope you're having a great week, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!